So, my dear mother was really a good cook. She liked to, well, she was stayed at home, so she stayed for most of my life. So she would always cook good meals. Always ate well, and every Christmas time, she would decide. We were very closely attached to the Catholic Church in our neighborhood, and she wanted to make pies and different desserts for the nuns and the priest up there. And one year, very busy year, I can't remember, I think she actually might have started working back. And so she was very busy, but she decided to make up pies. And we always got the scrap ones, the ones that didn't quite make it for the best looking pies in the world. So anyway, she made these pies and sent them up to the nun house and the priest house and left the one back for us. And Thanksgiving Day, we decided to sit down, and after the meal, we decided to have the pie. Well, she cut it up. She handed each of us a piece of pie, and we dug into it. And it was one of those, I think, where your mouth kind of puckers a little bit because it was so salty. And she looked at it and she, what is going on? And we were telling her it's very salty. And she realized she mixed up the salt and the sugar mix and gave more salt than she did the sugar. And now thinking about what the poor nuns and that priest had to do after they tasted that, they may not have gone after pies after that. I don't know. But anyway, so that was a fun story that I always like to regale because she, like I said, she was a good cook. She just
Do you
had a
remember
busy
what kind of
time.
pies it was?
They were pumpkin pie.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh,
But I wasn't a big fan of pumpkin pie. She usually would make chocolate pies for me, but that yeah, I ate the
wasn't
pumpkin.
your favorite the coconut cream pie?
Oh
She
yeah.
gave me the recipe for it when we got married.
Yeah, she used to make the best coconut cream pies ever. That I think
Got the
so.
sugar and the salt right on that one.
Yes, right. That's right. So anyway, hello, this is Don.
This is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 167, and today we're talking about sugar, sugar.
And before we get to that, do you want to tell your joke?
Yes. Hey, Don, why did
Okay.
the gummy bear refuse to go to the party?
Why did the gummy bear refuse to go to the party? I don't know.
It was feeling a bit stretched thin.
Okay. Those are the best we get, huh?
Yeah, I had trouble finding some decent candy jokes.
Is there another one in
What
there?
what do you call what do you call a candy that's always late?
Candy that's always late. I don't know.
A tardy tart.
Was there a third one that we have
All
going?
right, this one, what's a candy's favorite genre of music?
I don't know. His favorite genre. I don't know.
Sweet jazz.
All right, we won't. Yeah. We'll go on with just a quick tip here. Again, we're going with Caregiver 101, 101 Ways to Keep Caregiving from Making You Crazy by Mike Collins. And today, since we're talking about fruit, this one happens to go, it's about fruit facts is what it's talk, and it's tip number 31,
Fruit facts?
fruit facts. Yeah.
Okay.
Since we're kind of talking about sugar anyway. Caregivers are often so pressed for time that they neglect their nutrition needs. A simple and easy solution is to eat more fruit. Grab an apple, orange, or banana for a quick snack. The fructose, a natural form of sugar, provides energy and cleanup is easy. Dried fruit is a great energy boost and can easily carry a Ziploc plastic bag when visiting care centers or hospitals.
So it's interesting. They talk about bringing fruit with you and dried fruit. It does have, even though it's natural sugars, it is a high amount of sugar,
Yes.
and it can cause your blood sugar to spike. I'm doing a program right now. It's a restart program, and it's a sugar and kind of detox and cleansing program that you follow for. You really only focusing on the detox for 3 weeks, and it has to do a lot with leveling out your blood sugar. And there are foods like fruits, um, and a lot of grains, and that will spike up your blood sugar quickly, and then that leads to a crash.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about balancing, having good fats, starchy vegetables that are like broccoli and um, most vegetables, and then a source of protein as a good balanced meal. So I think back to when we were raising our children, especially when our oldest was little, and I was very health conscious with our children and, minimize the sugar intake. And I guess we used to go to the grocery store and I would walk around, say things like sugar, 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 sugar. And so I think our oldest would do that too. And so when my parents came up to be with our son when I was having our second child, my mom had gone to the store. It was right before Valentine's Day, and she bought a little, I guess it was a bear, some kind of little stuffed animal, but it sang the song Sugar
Oh,
Sugar.
that's right.
And just because, she'd hear him saying Sugar Sugar because I was saying it, and just very conscious of it. And it's funny because, I grew up in the Northeast and we grew up drinking iced tea, and it
Hmm.
wasn't usually sweet. You would add sweetener to it.
Oh, well, yeah, coming down here, it's a whole different
And then I
story.
came down to North Carolina and I discovered sweet tea.
Mm,
And woo, I have a sweet tooth, and I really became accustomed to drinking that. And now I have an alternative. I put stevia in my
yeah,
tea, and it
that's a good
still gives
alternative,
me
I guess. That,
the sweetness. Now you have to be careful with stevia because oftentimes when you purchase it, it has other sugars in it as
mm,
well. So this I love. It's now brand better stevia. It's a liquid form, so it dissolves really well. We make a big pitcher of black tea or green tea
like a couple
and
drops
cool
every
it
day.
down. And you really don't need very much of it. Stevia is extremely sweet. It comes from a plant. So this has deionized water, certified organic stevia leaf extract. It also has organic cane alcohol as a preservative. So, but it doesn't have other forms of sugar in it that other forms do. And I love the liquid. It just dissolves really well, either in a hot drink or a cold drink. But why
Well,
are we talking about sugar, Don?
well, good old AARP. I joined that up. It always makes me feel old, but in it they had a big article about sugar and the disadvantages of sugar, and they talk about there's a lot to it. I mean, it really comes down to, and they talk about it somewhat, but I know even in the doctor practice I work in, they the big part of what we have to do is bring down the inflation.
Yes, let's
Yeah, we need
bring
to bring
down
that down too, but
inflation.
that's another thing.
That's another podcast.
Inflammation,
The inflammation.
inflammation of the body. I mean, and it causes all kinds of issues. And so that's one of the first thing they do, of course, is they change the person's diet to get their stomach back in place and bring down that inflammation. But they talk about in this the different factors that it can influence, and I'll just kind of go through each one. We can kind of talk about it, but the first one, it talks about dementia and the risk of dementia. I think that's coming out stronger and stronger now that because it talks about reducing the blood-brain barrier, which then cause all kinds of problems up in the brain. And like I said, I've been reading more and more different studies about how much it's linked to dementia. They talk about the having a big belly because as you take us in, the sugar turns into fat, and it tends to live in your liver a lot of the times, which again causes your liver's right here in the front anyway, and I think that's what causes a lot of that. It talks about changing our nutritional needs as we grow older. Our nutritional needs change. We can't eat as much as we used to. Yeah, but yet if we're craving sugar, if we're eating a lot of sugar, it changes how it can increases how we want to eat. and it's not good. What we
Well,
want to eat.
yeah, the processing of it, I mean, depending on how we're functioning as far as our liver and our kidneys, and if those things are diminished, you know, diet is so connected to diabetes type 2,
Mhm.
and
When they talk about that, yeah.
people can really go, have been shown to be able to go off medications with changing their diet.
Well, yeah, because it causes insulin resistance, and they actually talk about the same thing with menopause. It can actually make that same kind of change for that and cause a lot of problems there. And of course, my great place is the heart and stroke. They talk about that, and I'm sure that was part of what some of the stuff I went through. But and then the last kind of thing they brought up is a tooth decay
Mhm.
and how it can change and cause inflammation up in the mouth and cause a lot of problems with that. So inflammation is a huge part of it, and that's like I said, it's what we work on with Dr. Mike and the work we do there is trying to get people to change their diet, change how they're doing it. You know, I don't want to do that here in what we're doing, and we're doing a lot of that now, just trying to kind of
Yeah,
cut
well, this
back on a lot of
program
that.
that I'm working on is it's very information packed. Like we have a whole, it's a lot education based and understanding how your foods process bodies, how your body processes foods. No, it's not a course on cannibalism. People, growing up in the 80s, we thought that eating fat caused us to get fat. They changed from peanut oil to, hydrogenated and other
Mm,
processed oils, thinking it was better to not have the saturated fat. Well, it turns out that the um, polyunsaturated fats are far worse for you. And fat does not, in fact, make us fat. Sugar does.
mm,
And so there's just a lot of misinformation that's been out there, all this low fat stuff. When I'm working on this program, I really should have 2 tablespoons of fat, good fat, with each meal, with protein and with those complex carbohydrates mostly from different variety of vegetables. It's balancing out your blood sugar and how your body takes in the nutrients. Because yeah, even nice apples and some fruits are more intense with their sugar content, like watermelon and things, and it still causes a spike in your blood sugar,
mm,
and then that leads to a crash, and that really affects your energy. You talk about your gut health, you know, and we need to have someone on here like Dr. Smith or someone related to that, a naturopathic
yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
um, and one thing I've already noticed is, so I had done this program a couple of years ago. I was feeling great, and that was the big thing, more than weight loss, even just how I felt in my body
Yeah.
and my energy level. And then over time, I did get take off a lot of the weight that I wanted to. And I think since my dad passed, I just eating whatever, snacking.
Yeah.
The kids have snacks in the house with going to school and work, and I've had that bloated gut feeling. And I'm starting to notice that calming down a little bit as I'm really paying attention to this. And one thing we can keep in mind is drinking lots of water. Unless you
Mhm,
have a reason to have water restrictions, we need more water in our body.
mhm.
It helps to flush things out, helps to clear things out.
Hmm.
And iced tea is good too. Again, it's sweetened with
Well, I
ice.
think the other part of it too, a lot of people don't, this is more than just about sugar, but in the idea of looking at the back end of any ingredients when you're getting it,
The label,
the label and
the
all
back
the
end.
different, the back end, yeah,
Don
the
has
other
new
side of
phrases.
it. But, and, thinking about, well, they talk about the added sugar versus there's two types
Right.
of parts of that they
Sure.
talk
And
about.
obviously, yeah, if it's coming naturally from the product, like an apple,
That's usually
it's
better.
better, but you do have to think about, yes,
Yeah.
if you eat a bunch of dried fruit, even if it doesn't have added sugar in it, it's going to cause a spike in
Hmm.
your blood sugar, which will lead to a drop in it. But if you balance that out with some protein snack, that can be helpful. So, yeah, talking about sugar, and they have so many different names for it.
Well, yeah, and that's where you have to look. Then you have to go into the descriptions of it, and you I remember seeing some that where you'd see fructose, and then so anyway, here's some of the terms. I mean, I was pretty surprised because it's about
Yeah. All these words
two
mean
pages long of
sugar.
different. So let's start with the beginning. Basic sugar terms, of course, sugar, white sugar, table sugar, cane sugar, raw sugar, brown sugar, and invert sugar. I'm not sure what invert is.
I've
Do
been
you?
trying to figure that out for a while.
But anyway, then it leads into syrups. High fructose corn syrup, which I grew up on that. That was the way to cover pancakes when I was
Well,
kid.
when you were a kid, it was corn syrup.
Yeah, well, yeah, it wasn't. That's true. It wasn't high fructose. You're correct.
They processed it in
Yeah,
a way to, yes.
and then they go to corn syrup, and then what we just talked about: maple syrup, rice syrup, malt syrup, golden syrup, and sorghum syrup. One thing we got to think about talk, and this kind of a side note, but the rice idea of rice. We cook a lot of our flour now has got rice flour, but that turns into sugar too. So we have to kind of be careful with that, doing stuff like that. All right, sugar derivatives and scientific names. I love this. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, dextrose, malt, maltose. I didn't know
Yeah,
that one.
os means sugar.
What's that?
Os, if you see os,
Oh,
O-S-E.
okay. And then lactose and galactose. That sounds like something from a science fiction movie or something. All right, then we go into natural sweeteners. Uh, honey, agave nectar, molasses, coconut sugar, date sugar, fruit juice concentrate, and beet juice. And then the last one they had in here is processed ingredients with sugar content: evaporated cane juice, caramel, treacle, barley malt, and ethyl malto. Did I think I'm pronouncing it?
Eryth
Yeah, well, they got it split apart, but I think it
okay.
usually puts it together. Eryth, how do you say it?
I have to see the word in front of my face.
Erythritol. This
Yeah.
has got a TOL on the end.
Yes, erythritol.
And it says here at the end, manufacturers often rotate or combine these terms on ingredients labeled to make products seem healthier. For example, instead of listing sugar multiple times, they will list honey, brown rice syrup, and evaporated cane juice. All
And
the same stuff.
and so, if you learning about reading a label, the first ingredient is what's the product has the most of. So
Yeah.
they can spread out that sugar by
Mm.
using multiple different kinds in there and not realizing, there's lots. And looking at that label, it'll break down
Well, yeah, the first one is usually the
the
heaviest, and
sugar
then
per serving. And it's important to note what is the serving size, because
mm,
sometimes the serving size is much smaller than what we might actually consume.
yeah,
I looked up invert sugar.
okay.
It's a type of sugar made from breaking down regular table sugar, sucrose, into its two constituent monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. The process called hydrolysis is often achieved by adding an acid like citric acid or cream of tartar and heating the mixture. The resulting syrup is sweeter and more soluble than regular sugar, and it also has better texture and moisture retention properties. So, a lot of these sugars, like high fructose corn syrup, they're made by processing
Hmm.
sugar and to make it sweeter, to make more bang for your buck, right? It's cheaper to produce these things. I mean, corn syrup, corn is so um, everywhere in
Hmm.
the U.S. especially. There's large crops of corn grown, and it's inexpensive, and so that's a whole nother podcast. The many names for corn, and it is everywhere and in everything. And
Yeah.
so it's cheaper. It's cheaper to use corn syrup than to use cane sugar, even or other forms.
Well, I've
And
I'm thinking back when I don't know whether it was at school or what, but somebody they brought in an actual cane that they develop it from, and it doesn't really isn't very sweet when you taste it. so they have to process it to get it to really a much sweeter taste. But well, I thought as just a kind of a sidekick is the sugar themed catchphrases and idioms that we use. I thought, why not? So the first one's about affection and endearing, and so sugar and spice and everything's nice. That's how what little girls are made of,
Oh,
by the way.
yes.
You know,
Yes. And
everything
what are
nice.
little boys made of?
Well, we don't want to talk about that right now. Sweet as sugar. Give me some sugar.
Yeah, that's very Southern, isn't it? I mean, give me some kisses.
I think it goes a little further than that sometimes, but anyway. Sugar pie, sugar plum, honey bunch. I need to call that done. Anyway, never mind. Um, you're my sugar, and life is sweet.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah,
So
sweet. Ain't that sweet? That was kind of a big phrase, I don't know, 20 years back,
yeah,
sweet, meaning it's great, it's
yeah, yeah,
enjoyable. It's, we associate sweet with positive, with
yeah,
love, with, I mean, like at Valentine's Day,
yeah,
about candy and sweetness and kind of ironic.
yeah.
Here, honey, I love you so much. Have all this sugar so that you'll get diabetes. That's
For
how
later in life.
that's how
Uh,
much I love you. Well, it
uh,
can happen in younger and younger ages. Um,
all right. Everyday sayings and idioms.
okay.
A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. I was trying to get that and record it, but I
Sugar
couldn't.
helps the
But I think
medicine
Disney's
go
got a
down.
lock on that I can't do. Uh, don't sugarcoat it. That's the icing on the cake.
Mm.
Eye candy. Sweeten the deal. Sounds like something from Trump. Um, on a sugar high, going through sugar withdrawal, taking like taking candy from a baby. Proof is in the pudding. Too sweet to be true. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So that's the everyday sayings. Relationship and slang terms. Sugar daddy, sugar mama, arm candy, trophy wife or husband. That doesn't make
Yeah.
anyway. Sweetheart deal. And then we go into marketing and advertising.
Mm.
Then we could bring in that movie. What was that movie you watched with
Truth in
yeah,
advertising.
Doug Dudley Moore, talk about all the anyway, sugar free but sweet. Naturally sweet. That's another word that has to be you have to really think about when they
Well,
put
and some of
natural
these
on some.
words don't have any definition.
Yeah,
They can put natural on something and there's no clear definitive
yeah,
definition for what that means. So yeah, advertising is meant to get us to buy it. Low
yeah.
sugar, no sugar. I'll let you keep reading this.
Sweet without the guilt. Satisfy your sweet tooth. Taste the sweetness of life. Stay sweet. Unwrap the sweet moments and indulge the sweetness.
I'm, is there another list?
Well, wait a minute. I do have something on there. What do I have on there? Oh no, I looked up popular songs. We won't go there yet.
So I'm curious in the reading you did
Hmm.
in kind of this popular magazine, AARP, talking about sugar and its effect on the brain, did it talk any about artificial sweeteners? Because unfortunately, there people think now that that's better for them, that diabetics, oh, well, we have sugar-free
No,
Jello and
I think they mentioned it wasn't a big thing about it, but it's not that
because
it
my
isn't
understanding
isn't
is
really. Yeah.
some of those are contributing to diabetes. That
Well, yeah, when you get like the
even the artificial forms of sugar, and they keep coming up with new versions. When I was growing up, they decided saccharin was dangerous. It killed the rats, and so they switched from saccharin to, I don't know what came after saccharin.
was that I guess was that when Sweet and Low kind of came out? Because that I think that's
Like sweet and low was saccharin based, I don't know. And they keep coming up with different forms of
yeah.
sugar. Um what's the one? um and they'll call it a natural form of the sugar, but it's been processed. It's been, our body is designed to digest food in its natural form. If you eat an apple, it knows what all the parts are, the skin, all this, the fiber that's involved in it. So there's other things to it than just the sugar content of it. And so when we eat something that's just used to be part of a real food, a real product, and it's been processed, our body doesn't know what to do. It's not getting that full food, and it can leave us with cravings, wanting more. And it's it's
Mhm.
it's not really that you're still hungry, it's that your body's doesn't understand. This is not the whole
That's really
product.
good because that was
Um,
something they talked about. This is when way back when I did the first rehab, and they were talking about wheat at the time, which is not great, but they were talking about when they break it apart
yeah.
and then they try to put it back together and it loses and like you said, it loses it wants more. It doesn't get all the parts of it, like you said. I think that's anyway, I thought that
And I
was
think you've got some sort of natural, the different sugars, not just brown sugar, but things they call natural cane sugar. And sometimes they add the molasses back in, so it's not exactly the same as I think that's what they do with brown sugar, right? They separate out all the parts of
yeah, I don't
the
know.
sugar cane, and then they add the molasses back into the processed white sugar. And so, yeah, like you said, it's not quite in its natural form. And so in this program I'm doing, there are foods that will help sweeten without using any sugar products. And so bananas are a big one. And so a banana starts out green, and when it's green, it's much more starchy. And as it turns yellow, that's when it's higher in sugar content. So we've been trained we buy green tipped bananas. So the greener they are, the more starchy they are, the less sugar content is in it. But I use bananas to make pancakes. I freeze them to put in smoothies because we had a recipe for banana ice cream that we would make with
Oh
frozen
yeah, we haven't done
bananas.
that in a while.
Um, and so, right, they're naturally sweet. And, part of what I'm doing in this program, we're so used to consuming sweets, like, that
Hmm.
sweet tea, I have that craving for it, that our body gets used to that. And when you eliminate that from your diet, when you're not taking in all that sweet, it can change your taste buds. And green apples have less sugar than red apples. And so that's kind of on my to eat list. And over time, when you change your taste buds and you get used to the way foods really taste, you realize, oh, this green apple tastes sweet. Whereas before, when I'm eating ice cream and cookies and even things like, oatmeal and other things, um, often, they're often with added sugars in them. And even without, oatmeal does cause a spike in blood sugar, and
No.
rice does, and
Well,
a number of things.
in a way, if I know it with that what Dr. Smith does, they don't even allow you to take the stevia because they want you to clean up not even have the taste of any kind of sweet, you
Right.
know.
And
So
and it's kind of like, I'm trying to build my health, and
yeah,
yet my program allows forgiveness. Whatever
yeah,
we eat,
yeah,
we there's a wonderful saying that goes with it. We, eat with intention, and we enjoy the moment. And so if I'm gonna
yeah.
um and so for me, I like my chai tea, and I have a non-dairy creamer. It's almond and coconut milk, and it has some added cane sugar, but it's only 5 grams per serving. Um, and so that's my little treat. I can buy unsweetened, there is like
And you've done
coconut,
a little bit of
nut
that here and
butter
there,
cream.
and there's not,
Yes. And so ideally, yes. And um, just things that are processed in general. You talked about inflammation before. We learned this the first time you had your heart attack, and there was a cardiologist who had retired and come out, and it's not the fats and the cheese and things that are contributing to heart disease. It's inflammation.
yeah.
And what causes inflammation? Refined sugars and
Hmm.
flours and processed foods, all those things really are contributing to it more. And yes, hydrogenated oils, other things like that are not good for you. And things like olive oil are, yet if you cook it with high heat, it gets rancid, and then it becomes, things that are bad for your
Hmm.
system to endure. But coconut oil, it's a saturated fat, yet it's a good fat. It's good for your system. It helps with your um, eh, um, it helps.
Brain fog.
Um, so there's information out there and it keeps changing. If been around long enough over the years, oh, this is better for you, this is better, um, and now it's looking at the source of where you're getting things from, right? Even things like
Mm.
lard, well, what is the cow fed that you're getting it from?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Talking about clean foods that are not exposed to pesticides and with cows, we got to be on the lookout for hormones. They give cows hormones to produce more milk content, and so that is getting into the milk supply. So having
Or eggs, when what are they feeding the chickens? That you have to kind of watch that, if, especially
or
if allergic, different allergic problems. So
and so it's paying attention. What we're putting in our body does really affect us. And sure, it's great to enjoy, a sweet. And it's about moderation.
hmm
It's about, but also paying attention. With my kids growing up, I would make baked goods myself and bring those with us when we went places. And then once we realized we had gluten intolerance, I'd find recipes for things to make. And then when it's homemade, it's made with more natural ingredients. You know what you're putting into it, and you can pay attention to that. I know I've bought coconut sugar, date sugar. Um, those are better versions because they also have nutrients in them. After I do this program and then I allow myself a little bit of sugar here and there, honey has nutrients in it, especially if you can buy it raw and
hmm
unfiltered. Getting honey from a known um, source is important because they will corn, there could be corn syrup mixed in with it, or if it's mass produced, the bees are being fed corn syrup, and so your honey is not pure honey.
Yeah.
Um, but having forms of sweeteners, that molasses, it's got iron in it, it's got other nutrients in it than stripped white cane sugar does,
Well, I don't know about monk fruit is one is a possibly,
and there's been a lot of talk about that lately,
yeah.
about whether it's helpful, whether it, is beneficial, or does it cause spike in
Well, I was told it was not, there was no spike in like a like
blood sugar,
what's the meter that they talk about with
the glycemic
yeah,
index. So yeah,
but
there can be mixed information. It can be a matter of where it's coming from, how it's
well, and also what it's mixed with, because there's some that are mixed with
yeah. And again, it's
erythritol.
erythritol. It's like this, it's like stevia.
You have to get it, you
Many
have to,
packets of stevia you buy over the counter have sucralose. That's the big one. That now sucralose. It's a
yeah,
natural form of sugar. They put other things in with it.
yeah.
They claim 0 calories. They claim all these things, but what's really in it? And it's challenging growing up in this world. And I wanted to another product placement here. So we like soda. Most of us grow up maybe drinking some different sodas, and there is this wonderful product out there. It is called Zevia because it is basically sparkling water
With
flavored and sweetened with stevia. And so I will read the ingredients: carbonated water, natural flavors, stevia leaf extract, and citric acid. So we won't get into natural flavors, and
yeah, I was gonna
we
say
don't
that's
know what that
another, we
really
will go there.
means, but it's a way to have a sweet treat. We have it on game night here and family gatherings and things. There are lots of flavors from cream soda to orange cream to root beer flavored, and they do taste
They even
similar.
have a grape.
They have a grape.
Take me
Um,
back to my childhood again. So
and, no, it's not going to taste if you're used to drinking regular soda. For me, when I stopped drinking regular sodas, if I drink it now, I can taste the chemicals
yeah,
almost like it. I've not, I haven't been drinking them, and it's rare that I do.
that's what I do when I do somebody with the EFT. If I want to get them off of soda, I just mix in the idea of how much sugar is in there or how much salt is in there or whatever. And when you taste it the next time, then you taste the ingredients. So yeah, it's a
So again, it's what you're it's like me with my tea. I'm used to having it sweet in there, and I try
mhm.
sometimes to drink my chai without added sweetener out the creamer.
That is
Um,
fun.
and it's, you get accustomed to different things. We have different tendencies for things, but a lot of times, we don't realize how much sugar we're putting into our body. Um, every time you're having rice, breakfast cereal,
Yeah.
there's so many things that naturally have sugar in the ingredients, like oats and rice, but then they're adding in like malts and
Hmm.
all these other things that they add
So,
into it.
the big part is to turn the other side, read the labels on the back and including the description and look what they're putting in it. That's a big place to start. And know that things like you say, like rice, starches and stuff like that, basically turn to
Grains.
sugar.
Hmm.
And if you're not balancing them out, like you said, with the protein and other things, it could be causing the fats and I notice the inflammation in my back if I eat too much. So you got to keep
Yeah,
an
it
eye on that
affects
kind
how
of,
we feel in so many
yeah.
areas. Yeah, I mean, we know our gut health is connected to the health of our whole body, but from, your heart health, your kidney, your other organ health, your skin, all these things are connected. And,
Hmm.
what we're putting into our body is affecting how we're feeling. And when we're stressed, because we are taking care of family members, we are going
Yeah.
to work, picking up a kid from school, stopping by and checking on mom or dad, doing all these many different things. And that's why things like these products out there that can give us a treat that we can enjoy. One of my best snacks now is getting the meat sticks. What are they called? Like jerky, and
Yeah.
but looking at the ingredients in those, you can get
Yeah.
clean versions that it gives you a protein burst. My favorite um lunch snack, Don makes my lunch for me. It's celery with almond butter. And I like to get organic celery because it is very highly absorbent with pesticides, and celery has virtually no calories.
Yeah.
And with the almond butter inside of it, I could just bring a container to and dip it, I guess. But
Yeah.
I like the crunchiness. I'm getting some protein with it, a little bit of sweetness. Um,
Yeah.
and that's something you have to make up ahead of time. But looking for things that you can take on the go. An apple is great because it's got the fiber in it. And
And well, you can always soak it in lemon like I do, so it
oh,
doesn't
he cuts them into pieces. But I
doesn't
mean, just
spoil if I did.
but for that's cut up apple,
Yeah,
but
no.
on the go. And
Yeah.
yes, it put some mixed nuts and look at, does your nuts have added ingredients to them? Getting nuts that don't, and you're mixing that in with dried fruit, thinking about those kinds of things. But having some things, planning ahead, looking where you can get
Yeah,
things,
that's a big part of it
because
is
if
thinking
and
through
when we're
and
stressed and when we're in a hurry, and then something's happened and people or family are around, people are bringing food, and um you're not always paying attention to how you're eating. You maybe not eating very much, but what you do eat, what is it you're eating? How, are you just drinking coffee? Are you um
yeah, it's another. I mean,
so it adds to the stress, unfortunately. And we think, oh yeah, this tastes good. I know that's how I am when I'm stressed and I'm, down dealing with my dad in his last month or so. Um, my someone had given him a big box filled with mini chocolates. Whenever we
yeah,
went to
yeah.
visit him, one for you,
Oh
Dad,
yeah.
one for me. Um,
Well, and you think about it in truth, food doesn't last very. You put it in your mouth, you eat it, and it goes away pretty quickly. So
that's why people
it
binge, and
yeah, it's
chocolate gives you that feel good. Well, sugar gives you that burst of
mhm.
energy, and that feels good. But then, like, I learned this from long drives, and you consume a bunch of sugar, and then it's like, oh, you get really sluggish, and then it's hard to keep your alertness and that for driving. So we're thinking about what we're putting in our body.
Mhm.
We're, just
Watching labels.
tuning in and paying attention, thinking about how we can plan ahead, thinking about what things we could have on hand to eat to easily take with us. If someone wants to offer to bring you food, if you're in a situation where people, ask them to bring a fruit basket, ask them to bring, um, more
Doesn't really take a lot,
healthy
actually.
snacks.
There can be
Well, it's
some,
just when you walk, the cheapest things out there are the
yeah.
things that are the most processed, have the most sugar in them.
Well,
And
they talk about as you go into a grocery store, they talk about going out on the outer edge and not going into the center,
because you've got
with,
your produce and then you've
uh,
got your meats and dairy
yeah,
products and eggs and yeah, and avoid it because
yeah,
and yet, is it easy to, eat whole clean foods all the time? No, I'm
yeah. There'll be little
but
miss-ups.
thinking about balance and just thinking about, stop no matter where you're at in this journey, just like maybe changing one little thing or starting to pay attention. And once you start paying attention and you can look at how you feel when you have something. I know with my kids,
Yeah.
we kept their diet pretty clean, and I know one time my daughter wanted a drink and it was this vending machine and it was more natural products, but this still had some preservatives and some
Mm,
dyes in it. And she just felt so funny after drinking that. And
yeah.
it's kind of a good awareness. Okay, this is how I feel when I eat something like this. Now, if you're eating it all the time, you're not even realizing. And it's so important to look at this with our kids because a lot of the foods that are out there, we have a kid in public school now, and
Well, yeah.
we wonder
Ah,
why we have a diabetes epidemic in the United States. But so taking a little time, homemade baking, it's the ingredients that
bring it back. Bringing back the homemade baking.
what you're making. And I've learned to cut back on sugar with things, or I'll use just coconut sugar, or I'll make two versions. I'll make one and and gradually changing. If you're
Yeah.
baking, you can kind of slowly reduce things and make a gradual shift for people. So taking
Well,
care of ourselves.
that's our podcast for today, and we hope you enjoyed it. We really would love to hear your comments, wherever you're coming from, whether it's on one of the different podcast things. If you can leave a comment, if you can share and become part of our journey here, give us some thoughts of what you'd like to hear. You know, you can always find out more about what Gina and I do in helping people that are dealing with the senior population and doing. We're going to hopefully get the Ask the OT up where we're going to be giving some videos on different things to do with how to get people into the house that
Caring for an aging loved
yeah.
one and some different equipment and different tips and strategies and things that you can do to help support someone.
And
Or
of course, every week I do my EFT little group tapping sessions, and it's all set up there. You can go up to EFT to Focus Healthy Family / EFT dash group, and you can actually find the link there to go to the group every Tuesday evening, 7 p.m.
and you can
Uh,
always email Don if he can directly send you a link by email.
yeah,
If you're having trouble finding that on the website, please reach out, contact us, let us know that we can help get you to where you need.
you can always check everything out at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can check us on Facebook at Focus Healthy Family, at Instagram at Focused Healthy Family One, and YouTube at Focused Healthy Family. And again, join us every Thursday when we produce these podcasts, and check out our archives and see all the different people we've interviewed. We're hoping to get some people in talking about, we talked a little bit about scams with seniors and hoping to get somebody on to talk about that real soon. But there's just a lot of stuff in our archives that can help anybody that's in that place. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.